Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely shatter the all screen time is bad myth. So, if you've ever felt guilty about the hours you or your kids spend glued to devices, well, it's time to reframe the conversation. We're not just complaining about the problem here, we're diving deep into the actual science of attention and emotion to give you science-backed tools to reclaim your focus.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover: not all screens are equal, passive versus active screen time, preschoolers and screen attention, college emotions and screens, the grayscale mode hack, and finally, building intentional digital friction. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Not all screens are equal. Seriously, it's time to completely rethink our digital diets and stop just looking at the raw hours spent on our devices.
For years, we've focused purely on duration, right? We look at that weekly screen time report and immediately judge ourselves based on that single number. But the actual science demands a much more nuanced approach. Enter the screen time duration myth. This is the outdated idea that only the total volume of hours affects our mental health and cognition. Think about it. Lumping a 2-hour video call with your family into the exact same category as 2 hours of mindless scrolling? That's like saying eating an apple is the same as eating a handful of candy just because you're chewing both. It's a total myth that completely ignores how our brains actually interact with digital stimuli. Moving on to Section 2. Passive versus active screen time. Let's see how this builds our completely new understanding of screen engagement.
There is a super stark contrast between consuming digital junk food and engaging with nutritious, interactive content. Think of passive screen time as being a mere receptor. You're sitting there watching fast-paced TV, mindlessly swiping through short videos, just taking information in without actually contributing. Now, active screen time, that's a whole different ballgame. That requires deliberate user involvement. It's goal-directed. We're talking interactive educational apps, problem-solving games, or even physically active video games. You put something in, and you get feedback right back.
Section 3. Preschoolers and screen attention. The crucial point here is exactly how these two very distinct types of screen time actually rewire a developing brain. Now, the empirical data reveals completely divergent outcomes based entirely on interactivity. Brain imaging studies using things like fMRI and EEG scans to really look under the hood at brainwave activity and blood flow show that passive screen time is directly linked to observable inattention and actually disrupts brain network integration. Basically, those animated, super fast-paced visuals tax working memory and reduce the brain's ability to maintain top-down attention. That's just a fancy way of saying the ability to willfully stay focused on a task. But look at the flip side. When preschoolers engage in active screen time, researchers actually see improved orienting attention and way faster reaction times. Now, it may come at a slight expense to effortful executive control, meaning the conscious management of thoughts and impulses, but the overall focus is vastly different.
What this boils down to is that a toddler actively solving a puzzle on a tablet is experiencing a fundamentally different cognitive event than a toddler just passively staring at a fast-paced cartoon. The pacing of the content is a huge, absolute game changer here. Did you know that slower-paced programming actually supports sustained attention? And educational interactive apps can even actively improve a child's focus over time. So it's not the screen itself, it's the pacing, the interactivity, and the actual cognitive demand of what's on it.
Section 4. College emotions and screens. As we grow up, the stakes kind of shift from cognitive development to emotional regulation. And this is especially true for young adults navigating university life. The data here is pretty eye-opening. It proves that your late-night doom scrolling is directly linked to anxiety. Studies looking at college students show that undirected, passive scrolling, especially right before bed, correlates heavily with depressive symptoms, rumination, and totally wrecked sleep. On the flip side, active screen time, like jumping into cooperative games with friends or those fitness-based exer games, often creates what psychologists actually call short-term mood repair. It genuinely enhances positive affect and supports executive functioning, mainly because it gives you a sense of competence and goal completion.
To explain why this happens, researchers point straight to our prefrontal limbic circuitry. This is basically the bridge between the logical planning part of our brain and our emotional centers. Passive scrolling, it dysregulates our physiological arousal. It totally hijacks the emotional centers of the brain without ever engaging the prefrontal cortex's goal-directed planning. But goal-aligned active use actually engages those critical prefrontal regulatory networks. So if we want to boost our mental well-being, the answer isn't necessarily locking our phones in a drawer forever. It's about curating our digital environments to encourage that active, intentional use.
All right, moving to section 5, the grayscale mode hack. Now that we understand the heavy science, let's explore our first really actionable solution to break that endless dopamine loop.
Productivity expert Stephanie Staples hits the nail on the head here. She describes how stripping away color literally turns your phone into an ugly, dull, and unappealing sea of gray. Tech companies spend billions, literally billions, engineering the absolute perfect shade of red for a notification badge, all just to trigger a hit of dopamine in your brain. By switching your phone to grayscale, you are actively dismantling that psychological trap. Just as Staples notes, it immediately gives you this kind of shocking awareness of exactly how often you mindlessly pick up your device.
You can immediately train your brain to treat your phone as a functional tool rather than a flashy toy, and it literally takes less than 30 seconds to set up. If you're on an iPhone, you just head to Settings, then Accessibility, Display and Text Size, Color Filters, and toggle Grayscale on. Android user, just go to Settings, Digital Wellbeing, Wind Down, and enable it there. Making this one simple change totally removes the visual reward of opening a social media app. It makes the digital world way less stimulating, drastically reducing your urge to just passively scroll.
Section 6. Building intentional digital friction. Our final strategy is all about putting deliberate, intentional roadblocks right between you and your most distracting apps.
Over 500,000. That is the staggering number of users turning to apps like ScreenZen every single month to claw their time back from mindless scrolling. You know how those built-in phone limiters usually go, right? It is way too easy to just tap Ignore Limit for 15 minutes and keep scrolling. Well, third-party friction apps are completely changing the game by actually utilizing human psychology to enforce real intentionality.
Imagine this. You tap on your favorite social app, but instead of the feed instantly popping up, you get a screen forcing a delay, asking you simply, what are you seeking? By forcing yourself to answer this super simple but deeply provocative question, you short-circuit your autopilot behaviors. You're forced to pause. You actually have to articulate a purpose. And honestly, if you realize you don't have one, it becomes incredibly easy in that exact moment of friction to just lock the screen and walk away.
These intentional friction points are brilliant because they ensure you're only engaging with your screen when you have a clear, goal-directed purpose. What makes this approach work so well is how surgical it is. You're not totally bricking your phone. You leave the essentials perfectly accessible: maps, text messages, work emails, the whole shebang. But you impose a 30-second wait time and daily unlock limits specifically on the apps that drain your time. It targets your impulsivity without crippling the actual utility of your device.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to challenge your daily habits. We've dug into the neuroscientific proof in preschoolers, we've unpacked the emotional impact on young adults, and we've explored some incredible hacks to fix the problem. But at the absolute core of all this research is one fundamental question. Next time you grab your phone on total autopilot, I want you to stop and ask yourself, am I creating or just consuming?
Ultimately, taking control of your screens is not about total deprivation. It's about curating your environment to shift away from a passive drain and toward active growth. Turn on grayscale. Add that digital friction. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. If your phone is a reflection of your mind, what does your screen time say about the life you are actively choosing to build today?